I genuinely think that only Mushoku Tensei could have your main character crying and screaming into some panties and make it into one of the most emotional moments of the entire series. We're back, man. We are so goddamn back. Hello, everybody. I am Phenom Sage, and welcome back finally to the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation episode reviews. Today we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 1, The Brokenhearted Mage. This episode had it all, man. This is basically everything that I could have possibly wanted for the introduction to this season and a follow-up to how Season 1 ended. The somber, melancholic vibe and atmosphere is here, new environments, new characters, cool action, but most of all, my favorite part about Mushoku Tensei, the character writing. It's just so immaculate. A while ago, I made a video on my main channel about the maturity of Mushoku Tensei. I truly think this series understands what it means to write mature, sincere dialogue, mature, sincere characters, in a way that a lot of other series simply can't. And what I love about this episode is that I remember back when the Season 1 finale aired, there were a few complaints about the fact that Rudeus had overcome his trauma and overcome his depression too quickly. Like, the man had been going through so much by that point in the story, and he effectively overcomes it in the span of an episode. However, I said back then, and I think it's even more obvious now, he really didn't overcome that trauma or depression. He is still very much lingering on all of these things that are weighing him down. And the real accomplishment in that episode, the climax and catharsis that wraps up that entire season, isn't him overcoming all of those things, but rather finding the strength and the will to keep moving forward even in spite of it. And that's exactly what we see for a majority of this episode as well. Rudeus is almost like watching a corpse in a daze, just walking forward mindlessly without any real conviction or soul. He's moving forward, but he doesn't really know why he's moving forward or why he should even be doing these things in the first place. You practically hear him say that he has given up on life. So when you have a character like that put in this situation, put within this group of people who do have a reason and do have a motivation to keep moving forward and to keep living, it's the perfect catalyst for Rudeus to find that conviction and find that will to live himself by the end of this episode. It's just such a beautiful, such a cathartic moment seeing Rudeus finally being able to smile again, to laugh again. I was almost tearing up just because of how this character is written in this scene and knowing what he's gone through to ultimately reach this point. Do I think that everything going on inside of him right now is just magically cured? No, I really don't think that. There's still clearly a lot to unpack within Rudeus. There's trauma that he'll need much more time to overcome, and I think that's fine. I think having your character finding a moment of joy and respite, even in spite of what he's going through, can still be a really fulfilling and satisfying moment. Rudeus isn't able to shake Suzanne's hand at the beginning of this episode because he doesn't feel that conviction or that will to live. It's only at the end of the episode, when his hands have been burnt fighting to save his and everyone else's lives, that he has that conviction again, that determination to survive and continue living his life to the fullest. I don't know, man. It was just a goddamn good episode. But there is one thing that needs to be addressed. I promise I'm only really going to talk about it in this review because I don't think it would be interesting or engaging to keep talking about it every single episode, but we have to just talk briefly about the production, and more specifically, the production downgrades. I think even if you know absolutely nothing about production or the staff behind this series, you would still notice a difference when it comes to how this season actually looks. I made an entire video about why this season would look different and worse compared to the absolute masterclass in visuals that was Season 1, so I'm not going to really repeat most of what I said in that video, but the gist is that the reason this is even happening in the first place is because a lot of the staff that worked on Season 1 ended up moving to other projects, and it also doesn't help that the schedule the remaining team are working with definitely could have been better. Now, what I really want to focus on though are these 2 episodes that are out specifically, episode 0 and episode 1, because I definitely still think this is a good looking series, and like I said in that previously mentioned video, I still have faith that this team are going to do good work with adapting Mushoku Tensei. The new director worked on a ton of season 1, so it's not like these are complete outsiders just taking over this project, and I think you can clearly see that they are still doing a great job at holding on to its core identity and visual storytelling. I loved in episode 1 how they used Rudeus closing and opening the curtains on the window as a way of not only calling back to season 1, but also just a great visual metaphor for his character in this episode. There's just tons of nice little details like that scattered in these episodes, but I also think this season may have set a worse first impression when it came to episode 0. Because I'm not going to dress it up here, episode 0 looked really rough in a lot of ways. There was weird storyboarding, off-model and melting character artwork, limited animation in some scenes, CGI crowds. It just really isn't what you want to see coming back to Mushoku Tensei after all of this time. However, the good news, something that I learned about this episode after the fact, is that episode 0 was apparently chosen to be made very late into the production of season 2. For whatever reason, they didn't think they needed to show Sylphie's point of view, and then suddenly they did think that, which led to them scrambling and rushing to create this episode in time to air before the actual season itself. And because of that, I think it's pretty clear when you move to the actual episode 1 of Mushoku Tensei that things start feeling a lot more polished. It's definitely not perfect, and I definitely think that overall you can still see a downgrade, especially in my opinion when it comes to the character designs, but overall it still looked good in my opinion, and it definitely felt more finished than that episode 0 did last week. So basically, I'm hoping that things with the production end up smoothing out from here on out. This is probably the last time I'm even going to talk about it unless something really bad ends up happening later, but I thought it was worth mentioning now, even though I really don't think that the production will be the deciding factor on how good this series actually is, because when I watch episode 1, I'm not thinking about the production, I'm thinking about how goddamn good this writing is. Other than that though, it was a pretty straightforward episode, and I mean that in the best way. One thing I love about certain parts of Mushoku Tensei, especially that first half of Mushoku Tensei, is how well it lets the story and the atmosphere really ruminate. We just spend like the first 5 minutes of this first episode just inside of this wagon on our way to our destination, and it's just so quiet and so atmospheric, and not only do you feel the vibe so clearly of what the story is communicating in tone, but it also just puts more focus on all of these little mannerisms and characterization going on with Suzanne and Sarah and Rudeus. It's just really great stuff, and I have to say on that topic, in general, I am just a big fan of all the new characters that have been introduced, and this also applies to episode 0 as well. I'm sorry that I missed talking about that episode, but I'm really enjoying Ariel and Luke's characters, and I'm excited to see how they play into the story at some point in the future as well. It's just a really strong opening all around, and I can't wait to see where this story goes now that Rudeus is at least somewhat back to functioning like his old self. You already know that something terrible is probably going to happen to some of these teammates that he's sticking with now, but I'm hoping for the best, and if not, at least it's probably going to lead to some sick character development. Join the Discord server in the description if you want to chat about Mushoku Tensei or anything else, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed the review. I love you all so much, and I will see you in the next video.